Hi everybody! Today we are going to be learning how to make pasta Alfredo. Typically you hear this with fettuccine, but you can really use any noodle. In this lesson we're focusing on kitchen safety, so in the lab setting we want to focus on figuring out the common causes of kitchen accidents as well as figuring out ways to prevent those accidents from happening. We're going to start by listing off our ingredients found in dry storage. We're going to need 1 pound of fettuccine noodles dry, or any noodle. You're going to need all-purpose flour. You'll need garlic powder, kosher salt, and black pepper. You could also use white pepper if you didn't want the pepper flakes to show up in the sauce. For ingredients found in the refrigerator, we have unsalted butter, half and half, and Parmesan cheese. In the tools and utensils section, you are going to make sure that you include a large stock pot with a lid, as well as a saute pan. You will also need a cutting board with a damp towel, a rubber scraper, a wire whisk, a tall plastic cup, a butter knife and spoon, measuring spoons, a 1/4 cup dry measuring cup, a liquid measuring cup, a kitchen scale, a colander, and oven mitts. The very first thing you want to do when you get to class on lab day is you want to fill your pot halfway full with water. Then you're going to liberally salt it with kosher salt to season the water. It really gives good flavor to the noodles and the sauce. So I have my lid on my pasta. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to pour some kosher salt just right on into my hand. And because there's so much water here, this is okay. This is an okay amount of kosher salt to put in. What you can do at this point is taste your water. I know, it sounds crazy, but if you taste your water and it tastes like salty enough that it could be a soup, you're good to go. If it tastes like water, you need a little bit more salt. And if it tastes really salty, you can add more water to displace that salty flavor. All right, so I have salted my water. You can also call that seasoning your water. I'm going to turn on my burner and I'm going to set it to about a 5 or a 6 and forget about it till it boils. But don't really forget about it. You'll need to definitely watch it. One of the first things you should do for your mise en place is to cut your butter, and the recipe calls for 1/4 cup of butter. Each full stick is 1/2 cup, so you will just need to unwrap your butter and cut it directly in half. There's even guiding lines at each tablespoon. So I'll use my butter knife, I'll cut that directly in half, and now our butter is prepped. The next thing we're going to do is pre-measure our flour. And remember, when we measure flour, you want to fluff it up with a spoon first. So you'll need a spoon. I have a 1/4 cup measuring cup here because when you make what's called a roux, which is what we're going to do in our pasta, it's equal parts fat and flour. So butter is a fat. See how I have that heaping right there? We're going to give that just a gentle tap to get any air bubbles out, and then swipe that right off. And now we have our ingredients for our roux. The next thing we'll do for mise en place is to measure up our fettuccine noodles, our dry pasta. We are going to use fettuccine today, but you could use spaghetti, you could use rigatoni even if you wanted. Any type of noodle will work. So the very first thing you want to do is place whatever object that you will be measuring into on the scale. That's going to automatically do what's called zeroing it out, which is going to pretend like this isn't even here so that we can just weigh the pasta, not the pasta and the cup together. When you've done that, go ahead and press the on button. It will say Z/T on/off. And then make sure that when you do this, you are on the LB setting, which means pounds. LB means pounds. If you wanted to change the unit, if you prefer to measure in ounces, you just press the unit button, and 16 ounces is a pound. And now I'm just going to keep adding pasta until it reaches 1 pound. We have a perfect pound right now. Part of thinking like a chef is getting everything set up how it should be set up. So for example, I'm going to cook my pasta in this pot. So I have my pasta. I'm going to be using my pasta water. So I'm going to have my liquid measuring cup. I need to stir it with something. So I'm going to use that rubber scraper. And then I'm eventually going to need to put it in the colander to drain. While my water's coming to a boil, I'm going to start my roux for the sauce. What a roux is essentially a thickening agent. It thickens the sauce up. So what you're going to do there is you are going to make sure you have a whisk. You're going to put your measured out butter in here, and you will just let that melt over medium heat. Once your butter is all melted, you are going to sprinkle in the flour. Remember, a roux is equal parts fat and flour. And then we are going to vigorously whisk the butter and flour together until there's no clumps and you can't tell the butter from the flour. When a roux is done or thick enough, it will be the consistency of wet sand. So it's already thickening a little bit. Now that my roux is finished cooking, what I'm going to do is add in some seasoning. So I'm going to start with my garlic powder and whisk that in. And as you cook more and more, you won't have to use measurements as much in savory cooking, which is what we're doing here. So I'm just going to sprinkle in some of that garlic powder. You should be able to start smelling that garlic. And then we're going to season it to taste later. So no worries if you didn't put enough. So I added in my garlic powder. And then the next step is to whisk in the half and half. My recipe calls for 2 cups or more of half and half as needed. To properly measure the half and half, we're going to measure it cup by cup. You're going to get down to eye level and pour just enough until it hits the 1 cup line. I'm going to do the same thing once again. Fill it to the 1 cup line and add that in. So I have my 2 cups right now, and I'm going to give it a whisk, let it come to a simmer, keep on whisking and whisking and whisking. You want it to be what's called nappe. We'll get to that one later. After 2 cups, this is what my sauce is going to look like. And we're going to just bring that up to a simmer. So I have my burner at about a 3. And you will just continually whisk. You'll start to see the mixture getting thicker as it cooks longer. And part of that is due to the roux, and part of it is due to evaporation. Okay, so I can feel and see that my sauce is thickening up. It's definitely a lot thicker than it was earlier. And the consistency you want the sauce to be is called nappe, which means to coat the back of a spoon. So I'm gonna get a spoon, test my theory out, and then add in the cheese. Alrighty. So I'm gonna dip my spoon in here, run my finger along that, and see how this is barely moving. That's exactly the thickness that you want this to be. And now I'm gonna start adding in my cheese. I'm just gonna do it by 1/4 cupfuls. So 1/4 cup, whisk that in. Here is 1/2 cup of cheese in there. I'm gonna keep the temperature on low now because we're just trying to melt in the cheese.
I've got 3/4 of a cup. 1 cup.
And as you can see, the sauce has gotten very thick, but we are going to use some pasta water in it. So at this point, what you should do is check if your pasta water has come to a boil and cook your pasta according to the package directions. My water has come to what's called a rolling boil. It's when the water is rapidly bubbling. So what I'm going to do now is add my pasta in. You do not need to break up the pasta, but you do need to give it a stir once it goes in the water to prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pan or to the other noodles. Noodles are full of starch from the flour that is used in them. And what's gonna happen is the starch from the pasta is going to eventually go into the water. So when you take that pasta water for your sauce, when the pasta is almost done cooking, it will actually add a good depth of flavor to your sauce, as well as thin it out a little. So I'm gonna turn my burner down, make sure that comes back up to a boil, and cook it till al dente. And then I will drain the pasta. When the pasta's almost done cooking, you'll give it a quick stir. You can even test a noodle or two if you want to make sure that it's the correct doneness. And then you're going to take a liquid measuring cup. You don't have to be precise because you are going to add water to the sauce until it is the right consistency. So we're really gonna work on thinning this sauce out. And then of course you always want to taste and season as you go when you cook. So once I get this all whisked together, I'm going to take a tasting spoon, taste it, and then re-season according to my taste. It's good. I really did not have to add any salt to this because the Parmesan cheese is very, very salty anyways. So this is still a little thick and we have all that salt from the pasta water. So I'm gonna thin it out. And if it's still a little thick, you can add more half and half at this point, which I think I'm going to do. Cooking is a lot about intuition and using your 5 senses. So I'm just gonna keep on whisking this together. I probably just added about a 1/2 cup more half and half. Remember, you want that nappe consistency. Once this is whisked together, my pasta is going to be finished. So I will go over to the sink and drain it in a colander. And then I'm going to put the two together, the pasta and the sauce, garnish with some parsley, and serve it up. If you like pepper, you can add that too. Season to your own taste buds. So I made sure to get my pot holders and secure them very tightly. Make sure you pour the water away from you into the colander. See it even splashed up, and I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's a bunch of steam coming up. You can pour the pasta all in the colander and then take your pot holder and just pour it right on back into your pot. This is what it will look like when it is finished. At this point, you are ready to scoop your sauce onto your noodles. And as you can see, it is cheesy, delicious looking. Using a pot holder, go ahead and give this a stir to coat the pasta in the sauce. This amount of sauce is perfect for 1 pound of pasta. And I can see that it's looking a little thick for my liking right now. So I am going to just thin it out. I still have some pasta water left, so I'm gonna use a little bit of that. Or you could use the half and half. And again, once you are done mixing up your pasta and it's coated in the sauce, what you can do is plate it up. This is what it will look like. All right, so to plate up this pasta, you can take a ladle and some tongs, grab a serving size, and then in a lot of restaurants, what chefs will do is spin the pasta around your tongs inside of this ladle until it looks like a little bird's nest. Then you can take that, transfer it gently, and then just finish off with a little spin. And then you can let the pasta just slide off of your tongs. Now, at this point, I'll garnish with some black pepper. If you want, you can garnish it with white pepper, and it just won't show up on the plate. And then you can also top it with some parsley flakes. So I'll just sprinkle that on top. It gives it a pop of color, a little bit of texture. And then when you are done, it should look just like this.